These God soldiers, each with nowhere better to go, nowhere warmer than these stone steps covered in chalk messages calling for love and defending your freedom, like the prayers of children praying to a God they hope can read from the footsteps of the devil who wants them gone. If he wins, they know they could all be carted away to Mickleham. Carry us over the space between where we are and where we wish we could be. For in this place, your lonely ghost is where we store our dreams. It's true, for what could never happen here now happens every day. I used to call this place the steps of solace, but now it's our democracy's last fort, thrown together and defended by these unwanted lions whose battle roar is that lesson we are learning. You can only die once on your feet, but every day you can die on your knees. Carry us over the space between where we are and where we wish we could be. For in this place, your lonely ghost is where we store our dreams. They are out there now, those nameless fighting your greatest battle. From their capture beds with the weather full blanket, as the younger ones sing those songs up from their smiling mouths, all sound like hope. Close your eyes and you'll find them there for all the time. Our angelic warriors partying like bright lights, streaming their laughter into the besieging dark. Carry us over the space between where we are and where we wish we could be. For in this place, your lonely ghost is where we store our dreams. They are out there now, those nameless fighting your greatest battle from the capture beds with the weather for a blanket, as the younger ones sing those songs that from their smiling mouths all sound like hope. Close your eyes and you'll find them there for all of time. Our angelic warriors party like bright lights, streaming their laughter into the besieging dark. Carry us over the space between where we are and where we wish we could be. For in this place, your lonely ghost is where we store our dreams.
Okay, we've got Lin Sutherland on tonight, and she's going to be talking about this documentary, Toxic Waters. And I've got a trailer to start, so let's play the trailer and then we'll bring Lin in. This is a slightly older trailer. There's a new one uploading, but it's taking a bit of time. So this will just give you a taste of what it's about, though.
The Dreamtime Serpent is the creator of everything.
Not only is the river a living system, but so is country.
Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Here, the Serpent created a major watershed. But it was announced in 2023 to 2027, these two cities would become the center of the world's largest chemical experiment. They've created a red zone where there have been aerial baiting rainforests, rivers, farmlands, and our iconic mountain ranges.
Directly over the river is baiting.
This has come all the way down the creek. We've had a week of it. Chemicals through every inch of our waterways.
The levels were alarmingly high.
The waters will change over time.
Any spraying of chemicals in rainforest trees will have effect on their roots.
The baiting continues into schools, parks, and homes.
Do not treat wind as no ends because it's so ridiculously toxic.
You do not have a right to fly.
covering 850,000 hectares of land.
The pellets that he was spraying were pattering down on the tin all round him.
It will be detrimental to the soil health, which will be detrimental to all plants growing in that soil.
And when it rains, where's it going to end up?
This is about to rain, and this stuff is about to go into the waterways.
Serious contamination event.
And when it gets into the waterways, it will kill anything.
But what they don't tell you is it harms all insects.
The base of our whole ecosystem's insects.
My neighbour lost 16 beehives after they poisoned his land and aerial baited his property.
What we're seeing is massive increases in lorikeets and in flying foxes coming into the hospital.
Some of these chemicals have been banned in other countries.
Nearly all my chickens are dead.
Pyroproxyphens affects the liver.
These dogs were healthy dogs that suddenly died not long after they were baited.
I was desperately ill. It felt like I'd been poisoned.
We lost 2 out of 3 foals after the baiting.
You ever seen a fire ant here?
Never.
Lost pets, lost loved ones.
She suddenly developed breast cancer.
This is a major environmental disaster here that normally would be on the front page of the news.
The Dreamtime Serpent versus the poison.
Okay, let's get Lin in and start. How you going?
Hey, Michael. I'm good. How are you?
So if the other trailer goes up while we're watching, it's not affecting the.
I've turned it off. It's very similar. So now we've showed that one. It's just a slightly. The new version, Toxic Waters, has at the beginning of it, it's got the incredible river systems around Australia. So we start in Western Australia, and then we kind of make our way right around the countryside, looking at all the incredible rivers, the connections of all the rivers, and different stories in different places around Australia where chemicals have been introduced into those environments.
Yeah. So how did you get into this? I know you've been a documentary maker for a long time. You've made about 85, I think. But usually they're about, they're not as controversial as this. So you're having trouble getting this one on air, right?
No, not really. I have done a number of documentaries. I do environmental documentaries all the time. So I have, ironically, this is a subject that I have done a number of documentaries on. It seems to be because I believe pesticides is, one of the biggest contributors to ecosystem collapses that we're not addressing. We talk about plastics and we talk about a whole lot of other things, but chemicals seem to take a back seat. And it's probably, I call it the white elephant in the room, that everyone will talk about a lot of other things, but they won't talk about chemicals because it's so ingrained in our economy. I think we've got a $38 billion economy a year here in Australia just with chemicals. So,
and I have to say, I've been in the Gold Coast now since I went to hospital. One thing I'm noticing is a lack of insects.
Completely.
Even driving down from even all the way down to Port Macquarie today, we were driving in the night before the bus got sick, and there's no insects hitting our windscreen, no insects flying in the lights. That never happens. Well, it never used to happen.
No, I know. Well, I mean, we've been slowly losing biodiversity from all sorts of things, but at the moment with this baiting that they're doing, which is, baiting every square inch of Gold Coast and Brisbane for the next, God knows, 4 years, already after a year and a half, you can just see the complete ecosystem loss. And it's almost like you're not allowed to talk about it. But I just I'm not sure how you can not talk about it, because to me, I noticed it straight away. It very first time they started baiting here, I had, lorikeets that come to my property every day, and the lorikeets flow, and I could see they were pulling out their feathers. So I saw it very instantly, and then that was the first time. And then that month, when I went swimming after they baited, I got incredibly sick. I got so sick, I was too sick to go to the hospital. I I thought I was going to die. I just wanted to lie there and die. I thought if I'm going to die, I'll just do it in my own bed. I didn't even want to go to the hospital. So I knew straight away the effects that this stuff has. So that was when you say, why was I so compelled to make this film? Well, number one, seeing my lorikeets. Number two, getting so violently ill, and then not, having to worry about swimming only at high tide at my beach in the ocean front. I went, no. This is the biggest story that people aren't talking about. So I dedicated my next year of my life, year and a half, to creating the cinema release that we're going to be releasing on Sunday. And I wish you were here, Michael. I would have invited you. So
yeah. But let's talk about it. So this is most of this is about fire ants now, which Queensland seems obsessed with wiping out. But I know we've had you on before, but just take us through, why are they so obsessed with fire ants? And in your opinion, because there's posters everywhere, fire ants everywhere we went, and they also, these poisoners can enter your property. You cannot stop them. If you try to stop them, they call the police, you get arrested, there's fines, correct?
Look, no one understands the new laws that they've brought in, and we don't even know if the laws are correct, but they're seem to be enforcing them anyway. If you look at all the legislation, they, most people don't think they should be doing it, but they seem to have a law of their own. Had I ever even heard of an ant or seen a fire ant prior to this? Nope, never heard of one. I knew there were fire ants. I mean, they've been talking about some sort of ant for decades and decades. I don't, 1 minute it's a fire ant, next minute it's a yellow crazy ant, next minute it's an electric ant. Oh, they'll come out with some other kind of, weird ant next.
These chemicals don't target just fire ants. They wipe out every ant.
Every species, actually, because, they're growth inhibitors. But not only that, they get even more toxic when they hit water. So, I mean,
Let's just talk about ants, because people take ants for granted. You go to an Australian bush, anywhere, and there's ants.
Yeah.
There's usually there's a couple of varieties, but there's ants everywhere in Australia.
Yeah.
And so we just take them for granted, or we even step on them. They annoy us. But in actual fact, they're doing a significant job for the environment, and we're just wiping them out to get rid of one ant.
Yeah, look, you can scratch your head all day, and you'll never come up with the sensibility for this. There's no way on earth anybody who's a conservationist or an environmentalist, I can guarantee, I work for the planet. She's my boss. If there's a story to tell, she'll tell me to say it. She said straight away, this is the biggest story on the planet right now. It makes no sense. Makes no sense to prolifically bait 2 entire cities, trying to stretch up to the Sunshine Coast and now down to northern New South Wales. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever to even enter this contract. So, I mean, this is why we're all asking the question, $1.2 billion to what? Wipe out biodiversity? If you ask me, we're causing ecological collapse, and that emulates climate change. So, you can't do this to your systems without having monumental effects through every essence, even your riverways, all the way to the ocean. So it's going to affect every...
They say that they don't dump it on waterways, or they're not allowed to put it near water, but you guys have got evidence of them doing exactly that. And there was other people who have approached me in Queensland. They say they've got evidence too that that's exactly what they do. They don't care about it. It just goes straight into the water. Well,
I can guarantee you've got plenty of evidence that they're dropping it straight in the waters. There's no doubt about it. And sometimes it looks like they're targeting waterways. So, as I said, you just got to scratch your head and ask a million questions, because none of it makes any sense. And like I said, when it does hit the waterways, it's even more toxic. But the whole thing you've got to remember, that the whole topography of our beautiful cities is the fact that water runs downhill. And that's the insanity of it. You know, if they're going up into these rainforests, like fire ants don't even live in rainforests. But I don't even like talking about the ants because there's far more ecological damage to be done with the pesticides.
No, but the reason we have to talk about them is that is their single motivation to do it, is to wipe out one species. They're basically destroying life. Like when I was saying, I had a house to convalesce in Currumbin, and there was no birds. There was no insects, no birds. And we're right next to the beach.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's no magpies, there's no anything. Because it's just something I like birds. I like, and that really threw me. And they'd been baiting there.
Well, I mean, I live in Currumbin, so I've lived here 20 years, right? And I usually wake up to choruses and go to bed with choruses, sometimes so loud you can't sleep because there's just choruses. I have a whole rainforest out the back of my property. It's definitely, I call it the silent forest now. I lost, first of all, when they first started baiting, I lost my fireflies. They were the first thing. They didn't come that year. I used to have the little fireflies, but apparently these toxins stop them glowing, stop them reproducing, because that's, you know, what these chemicals do. So they disappeared, and then, I mean, I've still got bush turkeys and not the same biodiversity. I've got a few lizards coming back. They kind of disappeared for a while. They're coming back. They haven't done my property yet, and I'm hoping that, you know, they don't. But it doesn't really matter, because even if they do other people's properties, like I said, if it rains, everything goes downhill and it leaches into the soil, and then it goes into the gutters, and then the gutters all run into the creeks anyway. So,
but they intend to do every property, though, don't they?
Well, they intend to cover every square inch of Gold Coast and Brisbane over multiple years, sometimes up to 11 times in some areas. So, as I said, I know we need to talk about ants, but I just can't. It doesn't, to me, it still doesn't make any sense. Even if you had an ant that was, you know, had the possibility of causing a bit of ecological damage, there's no ant on the planet that will ever cause the same amount of harm, not even remotely.
That's where I was going. So
yeah, even let them go ballistic, they'd never do it, because the other species would eat the ant. You know what I mean? So as long as you have the other species, the ant's not going to do the damage. If you wipe out all the species like they plan on doing, then the ants, you know, the tougher ants will come back. So,
well, that's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't, for the amount of damage, like scorched fields, scorched earth that they're using. That's the sort of strategy they're using. The ants don't seem to be of that much worthy of that. It's almost like they're using an army of sledgehammers to put in a few little pins. You know, it doesn't make any sense. And I went up and interviewed Terry with her, whose mother died. And when we were leaving, she said they came and sprayed her whole area. And the next morning, 6 wallabies just behind a fence were all dead. 6 wallabies.
And that's what I say. You know, we've had people's horses die. I got a property in Crumman Waters. One of the horses died there not long after baiting. And it doesn't matter how many times these things get reported. They all say, "Oh, no one's reported it," and it's just more lies. Do you know what I mean? And I think this is the thing that's really frustrating residents at the moment. Is look, my friend, they went to her property. Now she had a possum with a you know, can't see out one eye, running around like a crazy possum days after they're baiting, and that's a regular occurrence in the units and stuff, because you know they're even going into units to do this stuff. So,
what do you mean units? Not inside the unit itself, in the gardens of the units?
No, into the units. They walk into people's houses in units, and people have had their units done. So, and then the possums all die because the body corporate lets them in, and then the next minute there's possums dead in the units. And I mean, it's affected everything. Cows have died. People have, you know, got violently ill, like myself, and do know of a couple of cases of possible deaths, but you know, It's
what do the environmental groups say, like the Greens say? What do they say about this?
Well, at first they were all on board because they were promoting it. And I don't know how anyone could convince environmental groups to take this on board. To me, the very first time I went down to the first conversation down here at Currumbin in 2023, the end of 23, when they said they were going to do this, and I stood up in the room going, are you guys all nuts? Are you serious? I mean, is anyone kind of registering what this pitch is, this sales pitch is, that we've got to do this? And well, anyway, they seem to be all for it, saying, oh my God, these ants. But if you looked at the things that they put up on that screen when they were trying to first sell it to people, they had these demon-like diagrams of these ants and photos. And I said, I don't think that looks like those ants. And they said, no, we had to get them manipulated so people would get the fear of these ants. And I said, so you've digitally manipulated all the brochures you're putting out to incite fear. So this sales pitch is also inciting fear. So I said, that's insane. And, they brought with them their little pets. They brought a whole lot of these fire ants. And I'm going to them. They had them in a little glass thing. I said, so one of those fire ants can shut down a whole business, and you've brought hundreds of them to the Currumbin RSL. I don't think I'd be wanting them in here, but they're carrying them around like they're pets. So I was like, well, where are you going to take all those little ants that you've got in your little glass container there after this, talk? Where are they going? What are you doing with them? And it didn't make sense. They rock up at all the markets. They rock up at caravan shows. They rock up at all these places doing media pitches with these glass jars of ants. So I don't know. I just think it's
no, it's just trying to make sense of it. It's just trying to make sense. I mean, they've had they just have a terrible history of trying to get rid of trying to remove invasive species, and everything has failed. I think the only success they've had is on some islands, tiny islands. They've managed to remove rats. But mainland Australia is so huge that and you just try to look, because I remember when I was at your place. I'm not saying you're lying, because you're absolutely not, because I'm heard it from everyone else. But there seems to be no sense from the government. And the two things that seem to confuse me is, one, the government seems to be nuts what it's actually doing. Just the idea of poisoning every square centimetre of basically Brisbane, the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast if they can. And then two, Queenslanders seem to be just placidly walking through it as though they don't care. And they've got all this, they must be seeing the animals suffering. They must, like you said, the vets. In your documentary, you talk about the vets are seeing a lot of dogs, pets, dying and being injured, don't you?
Yep, I do. And the vets, a couple of the vets do speak openly about it, that they've, that it's liver toxicity and that these animals often die after baiting. So it's not, Channel 9's run the story on it. Last year when a couple of dogs got really, really ill, my story went to Channel 9, but I got sick twice. The first time I nearly, 3 days without moving. The second time I lost lung function for over a month after the helicopters went over. And I was really, really sick because I swim in these waters every day. So I'm like a radar or a beacon, tea bag that tests the water. And so I stopped swimming at low tide, because if I went in, I could feel it would affect, because I kind of had the residue, I could feel it affect. And I'm just looking, we got swarms of, so I was just, people are just putting up mentions about the lorikeets. I've actively seen the lorikeets pull out their feathers. I watched them only last week after they did about a month of baiting, and then it rained. They came straight here and they were itchy as, they're just itching everywhere. So the evidence is everywhere. Whether people want to look at it and see it, I guess that's up to the individual. These days, people just seem so complacent about everything. We've been so hammered. Yeah, we've been so hammered for many years about, just accepting chemicals into our lives that I think I think people just don't. I mean, all you can do is walk down Bunnings or the aisles, and you can see there's hundreds and hundreds of chemicals. And of the 85,000 chemicals on the market, I think they've slightly tested 600 of them. So
wow,
yeah. So it's
and
not.
you were saying that some of the chemicals they're using to do the fire ants are actually banned in other countries.
Very much so. In fact, I believe Australia's become a dumping ground, because most of these chemicals are banned in other countries now. You've got fipronil, which is a one that they unleashed in New South Wales, actually, to kill all the bees down in New South Wales, when they said there was a mite, right? But there's another thing. I've done chemical stories for 20 years now, and I just want to backtrack a little bit, right? Because one of the first chemical stories I ever did was down in the Tasmanian rainforests. We were down there and we're filming the giant trees and doing a documentary on the giant trees. And then we stumbled across all this clear felling. So I was coming up to these giant stumps where these 80-meter plus trees used to stand, and they were just cut off. And you could stand on top of this stump, and all around you where old growth rainforest used to be, you were just standing on this stump of devastation. Now, during that process, you know, what they would do is, after they clear felled a forest, they would do a ring of what we call purple carrots around the whole outside. And these were 1080 carrots. So that meant, because they didn't want any of the marsupials eating the shoots of the new little trees that were going to grow up, that means the whole ring of this clear fell now had poison carrots. So every marsupial from all around the place would come and eat these poison carrots. And 1080 poison, like you said, your dog died of 1080 poison.
Yeah,
it's a horrible, horrible, horrible way for an animal to die. And they just get super thirsty, or they have convulsions and fits. And most of these animals would then head for the waterways. And a lot of them were dying in the waterways. So now you've polluted not only your ecosystem, so the wedge-tailed eagles would come down, the Tassie devils will come down, but you'd also be polluting your river systems. And then again, you know, all the toxic runoff from napalm. They used to napalm the forests to light them in the first place. So all it's like the PFAS chemicals of the firefighting, all these chemicals and all this erosion now, and all these poor animals, you know, you'd get all that toxicity going into Tasmania's rivers. And Tasmania's rivers back then, forestry used to pollute them quite readily. So that was, you know, that was the first kind of pesticide one I did. But then I've done pesticide stories in Hawaii, where turtles were getting these ridiculous growths all around their neck. And a lot of the surfers at Jaws, some of them were starting to get these cancers and stuff. So they realized that was all the runoff from the glyphosates of the giant sugarcane places, because, you know, that was the Maui, you know, the water would come straight into that surfing thing. So, and then I've done stories in this new documentary that I've got. I'll put a link here. There's a link here. Can you see my links? It's got the link. Yeah. It's got the link to the movie that we've got happening.
And those links are in the show notes as well.
Yeah. I haven't given you this one yet. That was just cinema. Yeah. Or maybe I gave it to you. Could have given it to you. So, yeah, so we've done quite a few documentaries where, you know, in Indonesia and places like that, where a lot of the common thread seems to be rivers get polluted, and it's generally, you know, some form of chemical for something that's going on. So over the last 20 years, I've done quite a few chemical stories. So I know exactly what chemicals look like. I know the harm they can do. So this doesn't make the sense, because I know the harm they can do. How come these top scientists that are apparently, we've got more scientists in the world than we've ever had before.
That's correct.
Science is going ballistic. There's millions of them, right? But none of these scientists can make these very simple links that this is all connected. So my question is, what are they teaching them in science these days?
Yeah, well, teaching what to do to keep the money coming in. Can I just go back, though? I just want to talk about a country banning a chemical. Now, if a country bans a chemical, it doesn't do it on a whim.
No.
There would have to be a huge grassroots campaign. There would have to be actual evidence of people probably getting incredibly sick or even dying from the chemical. that would have to be studied. It'd have to go through Parliament. There'd probably have to be court cases. I mean, you're talking anywhere up to 20 years, like it took to ban thalidomide, to get a chemical banned. And so for it to be banned, surely Australia should go, it's banned there. Well, maybe we need to take that into consideration, but we don't seem to.
Yeah, but it's even better than that, Michael. The fipronil, the one we started talking about, right? They had pretty much banned that in Australia. They brought it back because they decided they needed to bring it back. They've had it under review since 2010. 2010. That means it's been under review for 15 years in Australia. And they actually pulled it off the market. They brought it back to do the varroamite bees. So they know exactly what's going on with these chemicals. And my whole philosophy is, like, they go on with these mites and these viruses and everything like that. If you put, judging by what I've seen chemical-wise in the environments from this 1080 poison and in Hawaii and everything like that, if you put pesticides into ecosystems, what it does is it lowers people's immunity. Now, those viruses come out in various ways. So the Tassie Devils, for instance, right? They got this disease where the scientists are going, oh, I don't know what these diseases are. Well, you know, after we saw all these dead animals in the creeks and everything, and there was all this 1080 stressing the populations, well, the Tassie Devils, they fight. You know, they kind of, if you hear them at night, they...
Yeah, you do,
They scratch their faces. So when they scratch their faces, if they're not healthy animals, they'll get an infection. So if you put pesticide or you're poisoning their food chain, these guys' immunity dropped. Well, then the scratches get infected and these tumors start happening. So chemicals have a way of causing cancers. So how do we know not all these things that they don't know what's going on aren't in some way linked to, a lot of the time, to chemicals? So a lot of the animals will show stresses in their environment and show viral symptoms like the paralysis syndrome. Paralysis syndrome is what they're talking about with the bats and the lorikeets here. They said that had never happened before 2014. And I said, well, 2014 is when they started aerial baiting the Daintree. It's also when they started these mosquito problem, treating mosquitoes with S-methoprene around lake systems and stuff like that. So that's the year that they introduced a lot of these chemicals into these populations. So I think that also can be something that we've got to look at, that miraculously 2014, S-methoprene was the prototype testing to get rid of mosquitoes. And that's the same thing. The year we lost the Reef, 2015, I asked myself, I didn't know back then, but that's the year 2014 is when they started aerial baiting the Daintree rainforests. So, you know, there's a lot of questions around this that...
Yeah, it's just extraordinary. Like there's, say the Nullarbor itself is covered in 1080, and I've been across it several times recently, and you see nothing. No eagle, nothing. No insects. We were driving at night in a semi-trailer, one of the last times I went over, in Morris's semi-trailer. So he had all his high beams on a semi-trailer. So everything's lit up. You would expect to be just insane with insects, and nothing. No rabbits. It was just like a life desert. It was really bizarre. And then we're going back there in the next few weeks, so we're thinking of doing the same, and just this time seriously looking, and hopefully we're wrong. But I asked truck drivers out there, and they said, they're not seeing anything. But I just want to show you something quickly. This is 1080p. We did, so we went across the Nullarbor. I wanted to show my kids Australia. And so we were near Mundrabilla, I think is the place was called. And we were there and we thought our dog just suddenly, I'll just play this, watch.
I'm filming. I'm filming. I'm filming just in case. anything. I keep the car door open.
So my daughter filmed this thinking the dog was scared of something. So she didn't know the dog was poisoned.
Yeah.
I'll just move it on a bit. That was her. And we're just having this road trip. Move it across. And so we're going here. There was no signs. There was no anything like that. And then there she was like this. And we didn't know what was going wrong. We thought she was scared of the bush. I want to show this because this was a beloved dog. My daughter used to call her sister.
Yeah. It's tragic, isn't it?
Yeah, but they didn't tell us. There was no warning signs anywhere. And this is what it looked like on the ground. We didn't even know, because there was no warning signs, we didn't even know if our own kids were... we didn't even know if our own kids had been poisoned or we'd been poisoned or anything. I won't go on. I just want to get here. And then they start to have these terrible fits. Yeah. And it's insanely evil.
Yeah.
And unknown, I've heard from that area, lots of dogs go through it. And they all run for the water if they can, because they must be on fire. So you're exactly right with what you're saying. So what is it with this? What is it with our governments or our environmental agencies or whatever, that they feel covering the land in poison is a good thing?
I can't even answer that one. I actually think the human race has gone a bit nuts. I can't see any sensibility to any of this stuff. And the fact that environmental groups they approached the environmental groups first, which was the most ironic thing. It was kind of sort of strategy. So I don't know why the Green Party even began to endorse chemicals, knowing that 90% of the time I thought non-for-profits were always fighting chemicals. It seemed to be a staple kind of protocol. When I did the documentary Beauty in the Reef, and I interviewed a lot of the non-for-profit people, back then they were all saying that pesticides in the agricultural runoff is one of the biggest problems we have for the Great Barrier Reef. So all these leading scientists back then were telling us that that's one of the major contributing factors rushing out our river out into the ocean for loss of marine life, corals, everything. So how does that dialogue change, being that dialogue in 2015 when I was doing my documentary, to now being, oh, let's pesticide the crap out of everything because it's so good, we'll get rid of one ant. As I said, there's just a twist in dialogue and narrative that no one that's a true conservationist, still looking, touching, using all their five senses and actually recognizing what's going on in the environment would even endorse. So my question is, I don't know what's happened to the conservationists. Are they scared? Are they threatened? Are they being silenced? I don't know. But definitely
that's the really interesting thing, isn't it? It's so, there's two people here that also said that they're having they've had dogs go. No, the dog did not survive. We buried it on the novel. There's but it just I'm trying my best to understand from the government's point of view. Okay, the danger is so much from these tiny little lands that we have to do this. But even think of the amount of money they would have to spend in this hard economic times on the amount of chemicals they'd have to use to cover all of that thing. Do you have any idea of the amounts they're looking at? Because they're not just doing it once, are they? You said they're doing it constantly.
They're doing it so much. And we're talking bulk chemicals. We're talking chemicals that you put into helicopters and you just let go, and they do it in wind direction, they do it before rain, they do it in all the times they shouldn't be doing it, and it just goes everywhere. And we had it for a month. They were doing it up here and you could see all the helicopters flying. Then they went and backburned the area that they baited. So not only have they put these chemicals down, they then went and lit a fire and there was all this toxic smoke people were choking on. And one of the guys that we know, healthy naturopath, you would never think there's anything wrong with him. He passed away unexpectedly. No one knows why or anything like that. But you've just got to ask yourself, as I said, you have to ask yourself what is going on. And the other thing that really frustrates me, like they shut the Snowy Mountains because they're doing this massive Brumby cull. It's another thing I don't understand.
Yeah.
They're saying that the Brumbies are invasive. Well, I've been up at the Snowy Mountains and it's really interesting. You can hang with those horses and they're the most beautiful horses you'll ever see. And I watched them cross the creek and they're quite dainty. They just walk across and they all walk across in this one thing. And they had said, oh my God, these guys are using, doing so much damage, doing these creek crossings. I'm like, no, they cross in one section and then they might not cross for, another kilometre down the road or whatever, or another 500 metres. So they're not really damaging the water. And as long as they're eating the grass, they're only pooping a natural substance back. But what they're doing is 1080, they're up there now at the Snowy Mountains. Not only are they 1080 baiting any animal that they can find, they're also using helicopters in there. We don't know what they're really doing with these helicopters because they've got all this helicopter in there and they're closing the park. So people don't, when they closed for this massive cull, people didn't really know what was going on. Well,
it's just the part of Victoria where they've been shooting koalas from the air. This was an interview we did recently. 1,000 koalas at least shot from the air with no one on the ground to see if they were injured or if they had joeys. It's just
interestingly enough, the path for the new rail that they want to go from Brisbane to China wants to build from Brisbane to Melbourne, I think it is. I think it's a Chinese company. I think that part of National Park or whatever it was was in the pathway. No one can make sense of that one again. But when we were up at the Snowy Mountains, I saw them pesticiding the rivers there as well. They had these little cars. They were all going around under the invasive weed species thing. So they're putting toxins in there. And I stood on the bridge and I saw toxins flowing down the source water of the Murrumbidgee River. Now they're saying that, oh my God, why are the fish dying in these river systems? We don't know why. It's such a shock. I'm like, well, what do you think? If you put as much chemical as you can into waterways and it's toxic as anything, of course, when it gets to the other side, by the time you have an accumulation effect of, these bioaccumulative chemicals, you're going to have all sorts of loss of life. And then that will turn into algal blooms because you've lost all your microbial matter. Because these pesticides kill microbial matter. That's why it killed my bronchioles when I lost my lung function, because there's all this good microbial matter keeping us all healthy. So, pesticides are I call them the silent killers.
Yeah, I just can't fathom how so many how people aren't just raging in the streets about this. I know they're exhausted from everything they've been through, but I don't know. It's maybe people are exhausted, like there's too many issues. This is just another issue on top. But I mean, even like the country is broke. If they're going to do that much poisoning of the Brisbane area and the Gold Coast area and surfers, I mean, how much money is the government spending on this?
Well, I think there's another problem, isn't it? The government seems to have endless money to give out for cultural grants or for, they're giving away money like it's sliced cheese.
Yeah.
They just can't give away enough of it. Come and get this free medication or come and get this or come and get this. They can't give away enough of our money. It's not like they're conserving any of it or trying to be, frugal with it. If you take a country, I think I've got the figures there actually of we were a first world country until, I don't know, I don't even think it's that long ago, 6 years ago or 6 or 7 years ago. And just in the last 6, 7 years, we've gone from an economy up here to an economy down there. It's gone from a first world economy almost to a third world economy. And at the same time, our immigration's gone up by 1.5 million people in like 2 years. So you can almost see these graphs correlate with the introduction of all this craziness going on in our country. So, yeah.
Even when they whoever approached the government with it and said, we want to poison everything. Like I saw that, I interviewed the B-boy. We went to his property. And he had such brilliant arguments as to why not to do it. He'd done his research. He was brilliant, but they wouldn't even talk to him. You know what I mean? And has anyone from the government, you've got a documentary, so you probably would have reached out, to give them a say. Has anyone given any argument of any worth as to why they see this as a good thing? I'd just really be interested in their side of the argument. Not to agree with it, just to hear it.
The side of the argument seems to be the exact same script that they give to everybody. It is to me, it's a media release. That's about all they've got going. As I said,
at Vast Harvest, that's the young guy, James at Vast Harvest. One of the most brilliant young men I've ever met. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Well, when I was in that first meeting where they were telling us about these fire ants and what they got to do, I said, great, where's your science? So I said, you're saying it's such a big project, proven in science. Anyway, she goes, oh, yeah, we've got science. I said, great, let's have a look at it. So she says, oh, it's just a 5-page document. I said, so you're, and I said, oh, great. And she had it in her hand. And I said to her, can I have a look? And she wouldn't let me look at it. But it's apparently a 5-page document. And they'd done, the research that they'd done had been on an area of about 4 or 5 football fields, right? And their research actually showed, it killed all the ants, because they were only talking about ants at this stage, but the good ants came back in. So I said, so your research is you do these 5 football fields and it killed every ant in the area, but then you said that the good ants come back in. I said, that's got to be the worst science I've ever heard, because you've just admitted it's targeting all ants. And then I said, but you're saying only the good ones come back in, not the bad ones. I said, that doesn't make sense at all. I said, if you're degrading land after pesticiding at that kind of level, well, I would think that the more aggressive ants come in because they need to do more work on the ground to actually get it fertile again. So a lot of these aggressive species actually help us restabilize areas. So ants are perfect adapters for this. And a lot of our other ants, like jack ants and everything, jumping ants and stuff, they got nasty bites as well. But you've just got to understand, ants are far more important to the ecosystem than worrying about the odd.
And probably we are.
100%. But then they'll call us.
With that argument, you're talking football fields. Now, if you've got 6 football fields, they said the ants came back in. Can you imagine how long they'd have to wait for one little ant to reach the middle of a football field, let alone 6? And now, so they're saying we're going to wipe out all the ants in the Gold Coast and Brisbane area, Sunshine, and the ants are going to come back from where? Like hundreds of kilometers away. It could be 50 years before the ants make it back.
I think they're flying in from Pluto or something. I don't know. You just got to ask the question: who's running this country? Who's running science? Right. Who's running our universities? That they're training all these people up. They're putting everyone through a university because they've sold that everybody needs to be educated in the third world countries. So now we've already got this problem in Australia now. Now imagine we've got the 4 countries that the main immigration's coming from right now is China, India, Sri Lanka, and Philippines. Now, if they're already got this kind of level of ecosystem collapse after pesticiding through the Gold Coast, Brisbane over these last couple of years, they're also doing pesticide programs in other places. They're just called weed control or electric ant control, or it's got a name of some sort.
Yeah, we were watching them spraying today on the side of the road. They had all their cones out and like 6 vehicles, and one vehicle was just spraying everything. They love spraying. They just love chemicals, you know?
Yeah. I said, I think Australia's become the dumping ground. It's become the dumping ground for banned chemicals overseas, and they're getting rid of them as fast as they can. That's what it feels like to me. Because it doesn't matter how much you look at this equation. You can be the best mathematician in the world, and you will not solve this problem and say it's practical or logical or makes any sense whatsoever.
No, so, I'm with you. I'm totally with you.
I've just got a real fun fact for you, right?
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
Whenever they find new fire ants in another location, the press release goes to the newsroom on a Thursday afternoon.
A Thursday afternoon.
Always. It's always a Thursday afternoon. And it's been that way. Apparently, it comes across the news desk like clockwork on a Thursday afternoon. So a little birdie told me that works in the newsrooms. It's the same time every time. So, you know, what's that telling you? That fire ants have just worked out Thursday afternoon's the time to, you know, find their way into another government property where they, you know, miraculously get found. It's just...
Have you ever seen a fire ant in the wild?
We went and found some ants in a Logan area, so we did find them. But the lady, we were treating them with hot water. I was there with Trevor, who he's got a hot water program. A guy called Trevor. So he was treating the fire ants. I mean, we were walking around the paddock without being frightened or anything like that. You know how
they get killed by them?
No, you know how they say they come for your children. They didn't do anything. In fact, we had to really knock on there and, you know, really harass them before they came out of their, you know, hidey hole. Anyway, he treated them with water, but the lady who'd had the property treated said that they'd been treating fipronil on her property during the year, and her dogs, who are breeding dogs, Portuguese water dogs, had absorbed the puppies after the poisons were put down. So the dog was supposed to have 6 puppies and only 1 was born. And so many people that have had their properties treated either lose young calves at the time or horses or whatever on the day.
Yeah, I saw a woman say foals, lost 3 foals,
Yeah, but if they don't lose them on the day, then when the animals breed again, there's a lot of birth defects, and then a lot of animals die from that. So it is an endocrine disruptor, which means it's also a sterilization unit, because what happens, even if it doesn't kill you straight away, it affects the reproductive cycle.
Yeah.
So it's doing it to humans as well.
Insane. And you know, like I said, you're trying to make sense of it, and it just does not make sense, you know?
No, the government has a million things to answer to. A million. Like, this is not just, it doesn't make sense. It's like, hang on a minute, it does make sense, but it's not a nice way you want to look at it when you actually make sense of what's going on. You know, you are causing ecological collapse. So why are you causing this? Why are you doing this? Because our rivers, like you just see, another thing that these toxins do, they just get all the microbial matter. So if anyone understands how trees work, right, they've got an underground internet. So they all talk to each other. They're all connected. But you break through that, you know, kind of microbial matter, and then next minute you get trees that just fall over. And then they're saying, oh, my God, you know, there's all this erosion. I'm going, yeah, we'll stop pesticiding and let the ants come back to clean up the thing, and, you know, let the animals come back, and the life will return. We just got to get rid of the chemicals. That's all we got to do. But their next thing is, oh, well, we'll charge you $3 million like we did in the Blue Mountains for our technology to clean up your water. So my philosophy is they're causing this, and then they're going to sell us all the technology saying we're going to rescue the world to clean up all our waterways. So
I'm just going to bring up the poster again.
Yeah.
So I stopped the comments for a sec. So when is it playing? Tell us where it's playing. I've got the show notes in the thing, so they can look there for the links. But where is the first showing, Lynn?
Nerang on Sunday at 4 p.m. Nerang Cinema this
Nerang
Sunday.
Cinema.
Yeah. And then if they can't get there on a Sunday, we've got one on a Wednesday at 6 p.m. So at the moment, we've only got the 2 screenings, but hopefully we'll roll out into Brisbane next. So if anyone can get along, it's a beautiful film. You'll learn about all the river systems of, a lot of river systems around Australia, the connectivity. We get the Indigenous telling us the stories of connection with the rainbow serpent. We start in the southwest of Australia. We go up to the Kimberley region of Australia. We go right up to the Daintree, and then we come along down the Great Divide through places like the Tully River, Carnarvon Gorge. We look at the flows out to the Great Barrier Reef, and then we come down to the Sunshine Coast kind of area and Brisbane and Gold Coast. And then so the first half is about the connection of all our river systems, but it also has various stories about I don't want to be a spoiler. You got to come to the show, but it's got a lot of history about how they tricked people into chemicals prior in the 70s and the 80s. So this is not a new thing. And then, the early Daintree, where they started the aerial baiting for testing in 2014. And then when we come to Brisbane Gold Coast, it focuses on the last year and a half of what we've been going through with this prolifical baiting of this fire ant bait here in Brisbane and Gold Coast. And it goes on to many people's, talks to people who have lost pets, talks to people who have lost horses, cows, looks at all the wildlife, how that there's just been, the Currumbin Sanctuary cannot keep up with the fact that there's so much more wildlife coming in now. And then, so we go onto a lot of properties where people, are getting arrested.
Here's a good question. Sorry, Lynn, here's a good question. What do the Indigenous people think about what's going on?
Well, as always, they don't trust our government because they've been tricked so many times. I don't think I've met too many Indigenous that trusted anything the government's done, even now that they're so politically correct. You know what I mean? They've seen it all before. They've heard all the lies before. I've got an Indigenous story in there about how they tricked the people back then with weed killers. So, no, I don't think that's...
Talking about your film, though, I just want to say that I've seen most of it. I think you were still doing another edit, but what I've seen is incredibly powerful and entertaining. So I recommend you go see it, especially if you're in the Queensland area. I mean, you've really got to start talking about this and talking to your government and then contacting your local MPs and say, if you're going to keep poisoning our land, we're going to vote you out. That's the only thing that will work. If politicians fear they'll lose their seat, they might listen. And
I kind of wonder, I just wonder what the politicians think at the moment. Have they been so distracted and caught up in, what they're told from above? Because I've got a friend in council. I won't mention, which council or where around the
show notes, Dawn. Check the show notes or wherever you're watching it on. You're watching it on Facebook? Just check the show notes.
Yeah, it's at Nerang Cinema, Dawn, on Sunday, this Sunday at 4 p.m. or Wednesday at 6 p.m. $10.
$10. Come on, $10. Don't forget to meet Lynn, and she's going to stun you. She's about 6'5" tall. She doesn't look it, but she dwarfs me. Yeah.
Everyone says I look really tall, but I'm not. I'm a pocket rocket.
Yeah, I'm the same, baby. It's just, this is one of these things where you just want to scream out of frustration, like grab one of them and go, what are you doing? What are you doing? Poisoning the entire suburbs and all the surrounding area. What do you possibly think you're doing? How does it make sense to you? Because this is where people think everyone's being paid, because people can't conceive for any logical humanitarian reason why you would do it. The only thing that makes sense is someone's making a lot of money and they're quite happy to poison the world to make a buck. It seems to be the only thing that makes sense.
Well, what
You know?
if you want a theory, and this is just, you know, I don't, this is just a theory, because scientists are allowed to have theories, right? So this is just a theory. I think what's happened is, you know, America's banned a lot of chemicals, Europe's banned a lot of chemicals, China's banned chemicals. They've got nowhere to put them. We're the dumping ground.
Wow, you think we're that dumb?
Yeah, I think we're that dumb. I know we're that dumb, because who would come up with this silly idea at all? It's I mean, I've worked in the environment my whole life. I've constantly known the effects of pesticides. So there's just no way that anyone that's kind of done the kind of field work that I would do would endorse this. So that's what makes me so upset. And I think the thing that makes me so upset is I work for the planet. I love wildlife. I'm even more happy going and sitting with birds talking around me, animals coming down. I'll go and sit anywhere in nature, anywhere in the world, and I'll have the biggest smile on my face. I'll just be like music to my ears. You just hear all these sounds. When you go to a rainforest, you just hear the wind, or you can breathe this air. It just makes you feel alive. When you go and stand at the ocean, you know, it makes you feel alive. When you go into nature, it heals you in every way, shape, or form. And now I'm going into some of these places, and it's deathly quiet. It's deathly quiet. And I'm like, I don't get bitten by ants or anything. I'm like, I wish I'd get bitten by ants. I wish something would, you know, be there. So, and I can just see the amount of erosion and poor earth quality in the Gold Coast since they've started this is through the roof. And then I see these guys with these pump spray packs in the council. Councils are just as bad. And they're spraying all the concrete. And I'm going, why are you guys spraying the concrete? And they're like, oh, just in case a little bit of weed grows. I'm like, okay, you guys have completely gone nuts now.
Yeah, I have. It's insane. It's insane. We've broken down here in, where are we? Rutherglen, I think. Rutherglen?
We're outside.
Outside of Port Macquarie, so we're stuck here. So we've got a few issues we're going to have to work through. So I'll call this quits now in case we run out of power. But so Nerang Theatre, Nerang Cinema, 4 p.m. this Sunday. It's $10 a ticket. Great reason to come down and meet Lin. She's done such a passionate job. Come down and see it. Come down and start having a conversation, because I actually think this is a win. I think Queensland people could get together, scare the government, and they'd back off. And it would be a great win. You don't have to be violent. You just have to go, this ain't happening. You're not poisoning everything constantly. It's ridiculous. And you can actually win this one.
There was a good comment just came up from Tanya. She said, people aren't dumb. These people actually lie. And she's actually correct, because these people come up to your property and they'll actually say it's safe and effective. And they will say the same comments to you every single time you see them. Like they've been given a script and they're actually told they're not allowed to talk to you. And if you ask them about the chemical, if you ask them anything about them, 90% of them have no idea what they're even handling, what they're using. They don't even pronounce it.
They don't even know what damage it's doing to them.
No. And they get brought in, a lot of these people, because they've had a high turnover of staff. So I think what happens is people get there and then they don't like what's going on, so they leave. So they've got to get new people. So I think they're probably just bringing in people from overseas, left, right, and centre, just to fill these jobs. So anyway,
Good luck, Lin. Or as we say in Melbourne, chookers. I wish you have a great show. And what's the one in the midweek?
Oh, so Wednesday, so the 27th, which is a Sunday at 4 p.m, or Wednesday the 30th at 6 p.m, both at Nerang Cinema. But hopefully, if this goes well, we'll hit Brisbane as well and get a number of, places in Brisbane as well. So And then if it goes well, I saw Dawn asked about the Sunshine Coast before. Yes, we want to get up there. So any cinemas that want to back us, we're willing to go to. I want to also do one down in Byron Bay, and Murwillumbah has asked us to, because they've started baiting Murwillumbah and Waddell as well down south. But the interesting thing, they're hitting organic farms.
Oh yeah, talk about this. No, this is really important. They're actually poisoning organic farms, which is it's almost making the organic farm redundant. They can't say they're an organic farm because their entire property is covered in this shit.
Yeah. And the organophosphates that they say are just as toxic, because they are, again, they're endocrine disruptors. So you don't have organic farming at the moment because the spray drift goes everywhere. The good thing is, if you have got an organic farm, you have a lot more life in the soil. So you've definitely got more resilience, because the farmers that actually use pesticides, a lot of their soils, like sometimes only 2% productivity, where organic farms will often have 10% organic matter, which means, and do you know an interesting fact here? If you have an organic farm, you have 9 times the water retention on your property. 9 times. Yep. And that's what they're not telling us. So by sterilizing all these farms and all these, and don't forget, they target places like the Lockyer Valley, which is our food bowl of Gold Coast and Brisbane. That's been done since 2019. That's the first place they targeted.
I hear they also target anyone who complains. So if you're a farmer and you go out to complain, the next minute there they are poisoning your land.
Yeah, they're not. They don't like being talked about. But anyway, but the problem is, we can't, the more people that are aware of it, it's a lot harder to, jump a fence if it's really high than jump a fence that just is open, right?
Yeah. So yeah. I just want to answer this question here. Someone's saying, do you have plan? Yeah, we're on our way to Sydney, but we're going to have to limp back to Port Macquarie to get the alternator fixed. But we are on our way to Sydney. Yeah, Rob. So, or row 8 red, whoever you are. So we are. So, stay in touch. All right, Lynn, I'm going to call it quits and get back to our current problem. I wish you the best. And I'm sorry I can't be there, but I'm on my way to see my mum.
Yeah,
eventually.
And you got no snakes today. You've just got a broken down bus of wild animals out the back.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Good night. Take care.
Say hi to Mum. All right.
Yeah, bye.
Dad was shaking his head down the phone. Like everyone now, he keeps repeating, who knows? I told him, make sure you keep our mom inside, for if it gets into her, she'll be gone. Then later that day Alf called, but in his smiling arms there was a frown. He said, you know, Mike, I have a terrible feeling that maybe this is the end of our times. We woke up again, but we had nothing to do, so we had some warm fun, not once but twice. But instead of recording a record third time, you lay against me reading your phone. You were scrolling through more impossible news, until despite the morning that was still kissing you, you said, you know, Mike, I have a terrible feeling that this may be the end of our times. Hey God, are you still there? Can't you see in the houses we built without you that we're all getting back on our knees? Oh Lord, do you that's what its lyrics were asking, because my kids were asking it too. You know, Dad, I have a terrible feeling that maybe this is the end of our times. You know, Dad, I have a terrible feeling that maybe this is the end of our times. But regardless, we are still holding on, despite death being due. Together we glow. It left me wondering if somewhere up there the angels were peering through a telescope at us. Well, I don't know if they know they are doomed, but from up here they look beautiful. It's like